Alright everybody, I'm Logan Alec, and in this video I'm going to be responding to this article from Fox News that many of you have shared with me. It's called Coronavirus Pandemic Puts Social Security at Risk of Insolvency by 2030. Okay? Now, I know many of you know this, but if you don't, I have a sneaking suspicion that there's some unwritten rule out there, some secret rule that says you can't be a news publisher unless you put out at least 1 or 2 scare pieces on Social Security per quarter. Okay, there's so many pieces like this that come out every so often. But before I get into this piece and my response to it, we need to define what we're talking about here, right? What do we mean when we talk about Social Security being insolvent? Okay, let's define the term. What does insolvency mean in the context of Social Security? Well, to define what insolvency means in the context of Social Security, we first have to define what solvency means in the context of Social Security. And what solvency means in the context of Social Security is that the 2 Social Security trust funds, the Federal Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund and the Federal Disability Insurance Trust Fund, are both able to meet their obligations. They're both able to pay the full scheduled benefits in accordance with the law in a timely manner. If the trust funds are not able to pay the full scheduled benefits as required by law in a timely manner, then Social Security is said to be insolvent. Okay? Now, why does Fox News' source, the Bipartisan Policy Institute, why have they estimated that the insolvency date due to coronavirus could not be sometime in the 2030s, but rather potentially as early as 2029? Well, first, let's start with the general reason why folks are scared that Social Security is going to become insolvent. That's not necessarily coronavirus related. So let's back up, right, and just talk about the general reason why many think Social Security will become insolvent. The biggest one is that there will be a huge number of retirees in the near future, okay? It is estimated that there will be at least 70 million baby boomers retired and collecting Social Security by 2030, okay? Baby boomers were a huge generation. It's in their name, the baby boomers, all right? And if you know how Social Security works, you know that, okay, you pay into it all your life and then you start collecting benefits, right? You can start collecting them at 62, okay? If you want to get your full benefits, you can wait until 70. But the other aspect here is that those younger than you, the generations that are still working, they are paying into the system as well. Okay, and that's a big part of making sure that benefits are paid on time. Problem: fertility rates in this country. Okay, Social Security Administration says that birth rates averaged over 3 children per woman during the baby boom period, 1946 through 1965. That dropped to just 2 children per woman by 1970, and today the average fertility rate is less than 2 children per woman. Don't mean to be sexist here, but that's just how fertility rate is measured. If I recall biology class correctly, when a baby's born, the mother is typically always there. The father is not necessarily there, right? They might not even know who the father is, right? So when you talk about fertility rates, we're talking about number of children per woman, all right? So if women are having less children in the United States, they're having less babies. That means less babies who grow up to earn wages for 12.4% of their pay to be taken out and sent to the Social Security trust funds. All right, so if a lot number of people retiring and fewer people paying in, right, younger people paying in, that creates a solvency crisis, right? A looming solvency crisis for Social Security. And then you throw in the coronavirus, and things might even start looking a little more bleak, okay? How does the coronavirus affect Social Security? Well, first, people are unemployed, right? Many people are unemployed. Millions and millions, tens of millions of Americans are unemployed. And what happens when Americans are unemployed? That means they're not earning wages, okay? And if people are not earning wages, that means they're not paying into Social Security, nor their employers paying into Social Security, all right? So not only do we have fewer people paying into Social Security than we might have originally thought 50 years ago, now we have this pandemic where the economy shut down, essentially. Sky high unemployment, which means that fewer people are paying into Social Security as a result of coronavirus. Okay? On this point, many of you, I've seen this in the comments, and I understand where you're coming from. You say that you hope that the country does not reopen and that it stays shut down as long as possible so that, hopefully there will be more stimulus checks and, there might even be this like $2,000 a month and UBI and blah, 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 right? I understand where you're coming from. I understand you really are desperate for money right now, but I don't mean to be harsh here, but that is a bit short-sighted, okay? What is the value of your Social Security benefits from the time you start taking them at 62 or 70 or somewhere in between and the time you die? Okay? That's a lot of money, all right? Especially as life expectancies are getting longer thanks to modern medicine, okay? Please do not hope, do not pray that the economy shuts down as long as possible for the hope of receiving another stimulus check, right? Or even, as some people hope for, a little bit of UBI for a few months. Please don't hope for that, right? That is incredibly short-sighted, okay? Because that will cause a huge crisis to happen in Social Security, all right? Think about the long run. Think about your future, okay? Please, okay? It is important for the economy to open, all right? Safely, of course, okay? Not only so that people can go back to work and make money now for themselves, but also so that we can keep funding Social Security, right? Another aspect here is that there are various benefits, right, that have been afforded in recent coronavirus-related legislation. And there are benefits that are still being called for, right? Payroll tax cuts, for example, that could affect the Social Security trust funds, okay? For example, right now, due to coronavirus, some businesses can choose to defer the payment of their payroll taxes, okay, such as Social Security tax. Now, what if that business says, okay, we're not going to pay our Social Security tax, we're going to defer it to a future date, but what if that business goes out of business, right? The owner goes bankrupt, right, or the owner goes off somewhere never to be seen again. Well, Social Security would have to eat it at that point, I think that's how that would work. Interest rates are also low. The Social Security trust funds obviously earn interest, and interest rates have now plummeted amid the crisis, so these earnings may be much lower than in years past. Okay? Now, why doesn't Congress just fix Social Security? Well, first of all, they know that the measures taken to fix Social Security will probably not be very popular with the voters, okay? Because it would probably mean things like more taxes or reducing benefits, although I think that would not go over very well. See, lawmakers, they tend to be focused on the present, right? They're thinking about the next election, all right? And if you're elected to a 4-year term, and even if Social Security is estimated to be insolvent in 10 or 12 years, that's someone else's problem, right? If you're just as far as the next election goes, okay? So that's the politician's perspective, right? They're not so prone to be worried about things that's going to happen 40 or 30 or 20 or 10 or 12 or even 8 or 6 years from now, as opposed to things that will happen between now and the next election cycle, okay? So please keep this in mind. I did have the pleasure of interviewing Michael J. Astrew right here on the channel, who was the commissioner of the Social Security Administration from 2007 through 2013. He served under both George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And here's some notes from my conversation with him. He acknowledged that there has long been a problem with the financing of the Social Security trust funds. And please watch this interview, right? I'll put a link in the description if you didn't watch it before. Commissioner Astrew admitted that he was idealistic during his tenure at the head of Social Security. He said that he and his team would talk about the problem of looming insolvency behind closed doors during his tenure all the time. They idealistically thought, he said, that people would eventually get motivated to make change once the problem was one they could no longer ignore. He thought that lawmakers would see the issue and deal with it. Okay? But Commissioner Astrew said that lawmakers have seemingly willfully ignored the problem and have somewhat of a compact not to deal with the issue. Commissioner Astrew warned that if nothing is done about the problem, there will be a dramatic reduction of benefits that happens automatically due to lack of funding. So, it's kind of Congress's fault, right? I mean, they don't really talk about this. It's a big deal. It is literally the lifeblood financially for millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of Americans. Okay? Congressmen and congresswomen, they just don't want to talk about it. What would it mean? What would have to happen? Okay? For Social Security to enjoy long-term solvency? Well, it would mean some things that the people may not like. Okay? It could mean things like increasing the income level that is subject to Social Security taxes. Okay? We know there's a Social Security wage ceiling. In 2020, it's $137,700. So if you make above that amount, the portion that's above that amount is not subject to the Social Security tax, neither to the 6.2% employee piece nor the 6.2% employer piece. All right? Another way to handle the looming Social Security crisis is to increase the age at when people can begin receiving benefits. Maybe increasing it upwards of 62 or upwards of 70 for full benefits. Cutting benefits, of course. Decreasing cost of living adjustments, or just completely giving the program a complete overhaul. Something that Commissioner Astrew said that scares me in that interview that I had with him is that he's afraid that just because of the way that people in Congress think, right? They're very short-sighted, nearsighted. He's afraid that, the late 2020s are going to roll around, or early 2030s, or whenever, this is on the radar, and Congress is going to put together some sloppy and rushed legislation, a band-aid really, to fix the issue rather than thinking about it now. That said, what is now? Right now, we're having crisis upon crisis upon crisis. Okay? Understandably now, Congress wouldn't be talking about fixing Social Security. But what about for those good years we had, right? Throughout the middle and the end of the 2010s. Those were good times for many people, okay? But Congress wouldn't talk about them. Now, will Social Security really be insolvent by 2030 due to coronavirus? Honestly, I think that Congress will take action, okay, before then. But like Commissioner Astrew said, I'm just afraid that it will be some kind of sloppy legislation that won't lead to long-term results, okay? But I do think that there will be such an outcry, right? If people are told, wow, you're going to receive lower benefits. I mean, wouldn't that make you call your congressman or congresswoman and say, hey, we got to fix this, okay? So I think that pressure will come later this decade, 2020s, maybe earlier in the next decade, the 2030s, for Congress to get its butt in gear and look for ways to fix this problem. Okay, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be on Congress's radar until then. All right. So don't be too scared. I know lots of you out there, you're worried about your benefits and things like this, but I think our country will pull through out of this. I think that we will reopen, right, and that things will be looking up. Maybe not necessarily in the short term, but in the long term. All right. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.